Welcome to Pandora's Box. You're listening to Aspen Waite Radio, and I'm your host, as always, this time of the week, Mr. Calum Waite. Or is my name, in fact, Obadiah Pennywhistle. You may also be listening to us on, or watching us, viewing us on the tubes, in which case, welcome to Pandora's Box, YouTube. We love you. Woo! In the studio with me, as usual, we have Mr. Nathaniel Warren.
Hello, hello.
Host of the Rap Radar.
That's
on
me.
Aspen Waite Radio on Sunday nights from 8 until 10 p.m.
That's the one.
Do you want to give yourself an alias today, man?
Ula Pollo.
Ula Pollo, all the way from the darkest regions of Africa.
Just from Stoke.
Oh, from Stoke-on-Trent. Oh, fair play. And also Mr. Drew Armstrong.
Hello.
Tech extraordinaire. Also the Wizard Schlieb and Captain Longbottom, the man with the longest bottom that there ever was. Or ever will be. So, how's it going? Do you want to give yourself a alias today, man?
Pardo.
So, Pardo and Hola Boyola?
Ula Pollo.
Hola Boyo.
Pollo.
I'm going to try and remember it like Hola Boyo.
Hola, boyo.
Like Pollo, Mr. Chicken.
Hola Pollo. Hola Pollo.
Hello, chicken.
Hola Pollo and Pardos?
Pardos.
Pardos, solicitors.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah. I was wondering why that
Pardos
came up.
and Hola Bolo.
Hola, pollo.
Hola
Pollo.
Boyo. Hola Boyo.
Hola,
Hola
pollo.
Boyo. Yeah, so this is for anybody that watched or listened last week, because we didn't film it last week. Pardos was off because he had the plague. He had Druvid-19.
I did.
As I've dubbed it. So how you feeling, man?
I'm feeling much better now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you tested positive on Friday, the Friday
Couple weeks
before
ago.
Halloween, didn't you? So what was that, like the 29th you tested positive, I think?
I think around there.
October the 29th. So felt pretty rough for a few days. Yeah.
Yeah, a few days. Few days was really
Let's have
savage.
a candid in-depth talk with somebody fresh off COVID-19 then.
Yeah.
So talk us through your experience.
It was horrible.
Was it horrible?
Yeah, no, I felt just...
Because we were with you, weren't we, like during that week? Obviously in the studio.
On the Thursday, I was feeling a bit iffy.
We did a Halloween
weird.
edition of Pandora's Box, which is probably up on YouTube by now, isn't it?
Yep.
Yep. And so we were with me and Hola Boyo. We're in Boyo. We're in the studio with Drew for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours on Tuesday. And on
Thursday.
And on Thursday and on Wednesday. I was with you. So yeah, I'm pretty feeling pretty jammy that I didn't get it. Touch wood.
Yeah, because I remember I was feeling a bit iffy that morning, and I did a test and I was negative that morning, so I still came into the studio and stuff.
Yeah.
And then on that evening, I felt really bad. Didn't go to band practice, and then on the Friday morning, I tested positive, and that's when it all started going downhill, really. And I just felt like really savage. But it was only really Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that I was really bad. Yeah. Like, just in bed, like didn't want to move. Yeah, like just really like, this is actually something. Because I didn't really like think COVID was that bad. And then I was thinking, it'll probably be all right. And it wasn't like crazy, but it was...
Obviously, you didn't have to go to hospital or anything.
No.
You were at home. But you just felt awful.
Yeah, like just needed to be in bed and not do anything, and had I think it targets what you've already got as like a bit of a weakness as well. So like my
because you've got a bit of a recurring thing with headaches, haven't you?
Yeah,
and you said you had like the worst headache ever.
Yeah, so my right side of my body normally gets pretty bad, like right shoulder blade, neck, and head, and it seemed to target that area, and I just had like an ice pick headache for like 3 days, but then I started feeling better, but just still really weak, and I was in bed by 8 p.m. every night and just slept through to about 8 in the morning as well. So it was
really,
because
you messaged me on was it the Wednesday? I had a message from you in the morning, didn't I? And you were like, "Yeah, man, just so you know, I'm like working remotely from home now." Yeah, because obviously you have all the kit like set up so you can do tech stuff from home.
Yeah, so that showed. So really, it was Friday until that, and then I was back working again on the Wednesday. So.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention them as well, because like you hadn't had the vaccines either, so that was like the state you were in without any vaccine. That was just like bare bones Druvid-19.
That's it.
I think I read somewhere that that's how long the symptoms are supposed to last, is like 2 to 3 days, and then you start to get better. Obviously, there is like long COVID where you tend to get it for a bit longer, but or the majority will get it for like a couple days real bad and then start to recover. Yeah.
And that's it. And I reckon it's only Monday just gone. So yesterday, or day before yesterday, that I started feeling like
you just like your normal self, really.
Again.
Yeah, because you look like your normal self here now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So what, we're on Wednesday now, so yeah.
And your Mrs. Meg, it's interesting, isn't it? Because she had like completely different symptoms, didn't she?
Yeah. So that's
she was
what
like
I think.
Muscle aches and stuff.
That's it. I do really think it targets whatever the weakness is in your body.
Because some people, obviously, in extreme cases, like can't breathe, but you didn't sound like you had anything respiratory at all.
No, like I said, it came for me. It was more like the head and that. But I have had this weird cough, and it's kind of been on my lungs like a bit.
Right.
But, and that I've just had stuff coming up over the last.
Yeah,
few
but
days,
it's not like
It's
you've
not,
been like, oh my god, like
no, like trouble
struggling.
breathing or anything like that. Like, no.
I remember you saying on Thursday that you felt a little bit chesty.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So that was it. That was where. So it was kind of like respiratory, like a bit chesty and stuff, but
respiratory, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And as I said, I do think it is worth just like saying that, obviously you didn't have the vaccine, just because if people are listening out there that have had the vaccine, I don't want them like this. Yeah, I don't want them freaking out thinking, oh my god, and this is with like a guy that's only like 31. Because obviously you just made, as is your right, you made as you are the only person that has sovereignty over yourself, over your body and your decisions. You and your partner made the decision that you didn't want the vaccine, which is completely fair enough. So, but I think it is important to mention just for people out there that are listening, or people that might be curious, as well. I mean. Yeah.
Definitely glad I've got those antibodies now.
Yeah, and that's the thing. As I said to you, didn't I? I said the silver lining is you might have felt rough as hell, but you've got natural antibodies now, and it's proven that once you've had COVID, you're actually the natural antibodies you get from it are more powerful than the vaccines themselves.
Yeah.
So if you had to pick like either or, the natural antibodies are better. So yeah, man. I know. Anyway, it's good that you're back in action.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and it's good to be in the studio.
Is Meg like feeling all right now? Like she's starting?
Yeah, she's back at work and stuff as well.
She's working,
but she was like a few days like
obviously after you, like delayed,
me. So I think I must have gave it to her. But she was pretty rough in that as well. But
it's the problem of going to sleep with COVID-19, isn't it?
That's it.
Yeah.
And we also had this little puppy as well that we've only just got, so that was quite hard. Like
his name was supposed to be Rupert. No, sorry, Rupert. But he's Rupert 19.
Yeah, he's now Rupert 19.
Yeah. Bit like K9, that little dog that was on Doctor Who. But instead he's
sounds German.
Rupert 19. Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be like funny, like it's like it was spelt like K and then like the number 9, but it's like K9.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rubbish, really. Yeah. Last week me and Ola Boyo. We're like talking about like conspiracies and that. And do you remember?
I missed that one.
So one of the things that we talked about was I can't remember what the name of the operation was, but it was basically going on about like the Cuban American conspiracy that turned out to be 100% true, and it led into basically saying about how JFK like didn't authorize like the operation, but like some small things did sort of take place that weren't authorized by JFK, the president. But obviously JFK was also assassinated, and it's one of the conspiracies with JFK for like ever since like the 60s. I think he was assassinated in either 62 or 63. Yeah. Has been for years that he was like taken out by the CIA.
Basically, in short, for anyone listening, the basis of the conspiracy theory itself was a form, I guess, that all of the government in the USA were trying to sign, basically just killing members of their own...
The American public.
Yeah, of their own public.
So the American government and the American military killing American citizens and like staging bombings in American cities.
Well, even like false flag things.
Yeah, to try and get the public behind fighting a war against Cuba.
Yeah, how crazy is that?
Sounds like 9/11.
And really, well, we were tying in with 9/11. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I don't want like people out there to think that. Like, I definitely think that 9/11 was an inside job. I think it was. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but what I'm just saying is this Cuban American one definitely was.
That was all proven and everything.
And and like if JFK was like a less scrupulous person, was more unscrupulous than. And he signed off on those documents. And actually think about what the ramifications of what that would have been. Like, innocent people literally in their own cities would have been bombed by their own government just so that America could have gone, right, we're declaring war on Cuba. And it was all
so this never actually happened then? It was just supposed to happen?
Well, no, but some like little things happened that weren't authorised.
Right.
Because basically it was almost like the the rest of almost like the government higher ups, almost, I guess people that weren't, as long as they weren't in JFK's cabinet, obviously wanted it to happen. Like it was they wanted him to authorize it, but he wouldn't authorize it. Obviously, JFK has sort of gone down as one of the best presidents probably in American history, along with things like President Eisenhower, I would say. And probably Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. I expect most Americans would probably say those four. Obviously, it's up to personal choice. Obviously, I expect it depends on the person talking, but I think they're quite universally loved. Those four presidents.
Wasn't JFK like doing something with like the Federal Reserve as well? Like he wanted to take it out of privatized.
Yeah, and he had a real issue with stuff being kept from the public, and he had an issue with the CIA and the FBI, I think. And I think I might have even heard. This is just off the top of my head, so I might be wrong. I think I might have even heard that he maybe wanted to disband the CIA or something like that because it was just too work. It was working in the shadows too much. But obviously, he was assassinated, and what they always said it was what's his name? Was it Oswald?
Lee Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald. But it's almost like proven that like from the trajectory of the bullets and stuff like that, it couldn't have been from like the window that he was. Some people still like try and push and say it was him, but it's almost like they think that there were like multiple gunmen involved, and it's all very shady. But did you hear about what's happened recently with the Biden administration? And it's literally, I've heard this since last week, so it was instantly when I heard this, I was like, no way.
Pandora's box.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously the current president of the United States is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of controversy with him because he's like a 78-year-old man with dementia, and apparently he like hasn't even got like control over his bowels. I think when you think about the fact that he's like nearly 80, it is a bit crazy. Like my missus is like Nan's younger than that.
I heard is whenever there's like the elections or anything, I get not into it so much, but I'll watch it all on CNN and everything to just follow what's going on with it. And he did like a speech when he was winning, and he almost won me over with the speech he did. He walked on stage, he was like, "Well, I saw my my nan and my granddad recently, and they said or maybe it was his dad and his mum. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I was going to say, what, they like 120?
But basically, they were just like, Joe, you can do whatever you want, so don't stop fighting. And then he like put his hand up and was like, so don't stop fighting, guys. We're going to win this thing. And then just walked off stage.
Yeah.
And I thought it was quite cool.
Yeah.
So he won me over with that.
Anyway, so
back on track.
Anyway, so... Well, I thought this was really interesting though. So there was like reviews of all these government like cases and files as there is like every now and again.
Right.
And there was talk of unleashing. That's an epic way of sort of describing it, isn't it? Of releasing and unleashing all the government files on the JFK assassination. Right. And interestingly, so it's completely up to the president when this happens, right?
Yeah.
So Joe Biden, interestingly, decided not to sign the pass on releasing the details to the public. So what do you think that told me?
Why?
What that told me was that there was definitely some government involvement.
Dodgy, yeah.
Because otherwise, why wouldn't he pass it? And apparently, he released a statement, or like maybe not him, but his secretary or his cabinet or something, released a statement saying something along the lines of like. It's even though it happened in like the early 60s, it's still too fresh in the mind, and there are still people alive that today that would face consequences from this information being brought to light.
Good.
So I listened to that and I was like, right, so you might as well be saying that it's dodgy.
Yeah.
You might as well be saying
100%.
that whichever information this is, because if it wasn't, then it just definitely would be released. So it's almost like going to be brushed under the carpet for like another 25 years, and then whoever's president then is probably going to be like, oh yeah, do you want to release this? And by that point, I imagine it probably will come out then. Yeah. Because by that point, it'll be like 85 years or something since it happened, and everyone to do with it will be dead. Do you know what I mean? Like, but it's like, I just think that's so crazy though. Yeah. So it's almost like, to me, it's now almost like a fact that JFK
it's like an admission of guilt, isn't it?
Yeah. Just because, it's like by default, it is an admission of guilt, because by not releasing it, you're just almost admitting that there's something weird. There's just no way that you wouldn't pass it otherwise.
He just read it and was like, that's not going out.
Yeah, but that's one thing I think is, as I said, like, I know that people like hate on Donald Trump, but I think that Donald Trump would have probably released the files.
Oh yeah.
Because I think like with him, he's almost like unashamedly like, you know, like
calls out the media all the time.
Yeah, he calls out everything, doesn't he? And I think that like
It's
some
we're all
people,
liars.
yeah, some people don't like that sort of brash attitude. And I think because he's very un-PC and we live in very PC times, and he's the sort of person that like if you're easily offended, he's going to offend you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like someone like Trump. But I don't know. I think that like. The worst thing I think about any government is government that hides stuff from the public.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think there's like levels to like malevolence, and on the like there's like the stuff that's on the surface, which I would think almost like Trump is like, which is like, you know, he can be
Brash.
he can be like insensitive. Do you know what I mean? He can say things that are a bit sexist sometimes.
Yeah.
He might say things, I can't think of anything like necessarily examples, but he may have said things at times that might be considered a little bit racist. I don't know, but do you know what I mean? That's like surface level, like minor offences, what I would consider. And then you've got things that run deeper, like large scale, like lying. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're supposed to be like the president or the prime minister or whatever, your duty is to the people, isn't it? When you're like telling that people one thing and then doing another, I think that is really bad. I think that's really morally corrupt.
I think a big problem with Trump as well is like you mentioned some of the racism that like he brought, but I think I'm not too well endowed in everything that was going on. So
don't say that on air, mate.
but basically, I think he was getting like everyone deported and like people were losing their families and
I think what was going on and I don't know. I think there was a little bit of a false flag with this thing. Personally, as I said, I'm not an expert on it, but I have looked into it quite a lot. I think that basically what he didn't like was uncontrolled migration. Like, you know,
right.
You know, I think that's to be honest, I think that's fair enough though. I think that like when you're the head of a country, I think you should be aware of who is coming in and out of your country for security purposes. I think what the problem is that obviously the border with Mexico is obviously you have all the Texas Rangers that have to like then essentially like patrol that border,
police it all.
because there's lots of drug cartels that are trying to come in from Mexico, from South America into Texas and stuff, and it's almost like and lots of criminals. That's obviously not saying that Mexicans are criminals or anything like that. It's just saying that there are criminals in South America that are trying to get into America for whatever reason, whether it's to sell guns on the black market, drugs, whatever, okay? And there are obviously just procedures in place. Say you want to become a citizen of the United States of America. Say we wanted to go and live in America. We understand as British citizens that there are procedures that you would have to go through and that it would take a while. You don't just catch a plane to America and you're like, I live in America now. Like, because after a while, you would be deported because it's like, have you got a visa to be here? You know, you're not a citizen. Like, you need to apply for a visa and stuff like that. You need to become an American citizen. Like, whereas I think the problem is because of this uncontrolled migration, you've just got a lot of people from South America now to try and have a better life. And don't get me wrong, trying to have a better life is an admirable thing, but they're just trying to basically find gaps in fences and trying to illegally enter America. And as a result, it's like, well, who has control? Who even knows? Because, like, let's face it, the government should know the population of the country, any citizens that are a danger to the rest of the population, things like that. As soon as that goes out the window, then it's just sort of havoc. Yeah, it's just chaos, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, I think it's a kick in the teeth to the Mexicans and the South Americans that are trying to go about it the right way. Say you enter a list, say you want to become an American citizen and you're a Mexican and you want to, say, move to like California because, you know, the wages are better, the shops and the restaurants are better, it's just a better life for your family in general, and you've been put on a waiting list, but you've been told the waiting list might take, 3 years until your application might be looked at, right? Yeah, that's a frustratingly long time to be looked at. But then why should frickin' Johnny Rodriguez from next door be like, no, I'm not going to bother with it, actually. I'm just going to
pop through the fence.
I'm just going to wait until midnight tonight, and I'm just going to just go and try to find a gap in the fence, and I'm just going to make a full-on run for it, and then I'm just going to work for some like dodgy like cafe owner somewhere scrubbing plates in his kitchen who like knows I'm an illegal immigrant but doesn't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think. So I don't know. I actually have a little bit of sympathy for Trump. I think a lot of the things he said. I think that like people that are against Trump, I think, tried to make out that he was like a racist, whereas I just realised I've been saying migration, I meant to say immigration. Like, I think really what he was getting at was he wasn't anti-immigration, he was pro, like, you know...
security.
Yeah, like, go about it in the right way, you know? Don't just have uncontrolled immigration. You need to have controlled immigration. There needs to be processes in place. You can't just, like, essentially just open the door and be like, yep, everyone that wants to come in, because that's, like, just a bit crazy. And it's just asking for bad news, isn't it?
Bad juju.
I said maybe there's a bit more to it than that, but that's just from my own understanding, and that's because I don't know when Trump was president, I heard so much bad stuff about him. I looked into it because I was almost like, oh, I want to know like why this guy was
right.
Like,
Yeah.
And like other than so he said famously, didn't he, that like. He'd said some like bad stuff.
Yeah.
Like he said that like there was that woman that he said he wanted to grab her by the lady garden, but he said it a bit ruder than that. Did you remember hearing that?
Yeah.
He said something like, "I want to grab you by the PUSSY."
Oh.
So like that's you shouldn't say that to a woman, should you?
No.
A woman you don't know. And I think he's one of those guys that made jokes and stuff. But I mean, let's face it, right? Who doesn't know guys that would say stuff like that? That's not an excuse for it. But what I'm saying is almost like to single him out like he's like this awful human being. Whereas like I know people personally that would say that, and I don't even think that they're bad guys. I don't agree with them saying that, and I think that is a bad thing to say. And if somebody said that in front of me to another woman, I'd probably be like, shut up. you know?
Yeah.
But as I said like earlier on, I think that's almost like
you've got to look at the whole picture, haven't you?
Yeah,
and not just.
It's like an insensitive. It's a foolish thing to say, and it's a crass thing to say. Does that make someone like an evil person or like a bad person? I don't think so personally. I just think that maybe they need to just change their tune a little bit when it comes to things like that. You know?
Yeah, I think he also, like I said, I'm not very knowledgeable of this subject, but I think he also doesn't necessarily give a feeling of control to a lot of people.
What, Trump or Biden?
Trump, purely
right.
because of his like some of his antics and everything definitely help him in control, but then also other people almost feel like he's crazy. Like, you can't trust what he's going to do, all that kind of stuff, especially on, like, his Twitter and stuff when he's constantly posting out stuff.
Because he's such a loose cannon with things.
Exactly. And I think that's a reason that people don't feel they can trust him being
I do think it's quite funny that, like, obviously he's, like, a president that, like, if somebody disses him on Twitter, he'll just diss him back.
Yeah.
It's quite like but it's a very, like, American thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Do
definitely.
you know what I mean?
I like that, though.
I think it's almost, like, funny.
Yeah.
I also, though, like, as I said, you know, I'm not like, I don't want people to think that I'm like necessarily a Trump supporter. I'm not a Trump supporter or a Trump or somebody that doesn't like Trump. I'm not even American, so I don't have a piece of the pie or whatever. Do you know what I mean? I don't have like I'm not invested in it. I'm just like an outsider looking in. I mean, but though you say about the whole like security thing there with Trump, like if you compare that to the current administration, you can't tell me that Joe Biden's better than Trump. I mean, look at the Afghanistan withdrawal, and the ramifications of that have been like literally catastrophic. So there is no way in hell that Trump would have withdrew from Afghanistan. As a result of that, now what were statistics that I read? I think it might have been more. I think it was 2 million women who were either in school or training to be athletes or whatever have now, because now they've been put under
Taliban control,
extreme Islamic rule. Now have been told, no, you're not going to school anymore. Can't train to be an athlete anymore because these are all things that only men can do. And now, not only have the women had their dreams shattered, they now have to wear the full garb, even if they personally before didn't want to do that. And now they're not even allowed to leave their houses unless a male member of that household accompanies them.
That's ridiculous.
Basically the women of Afghanistan are screwed, and that is purely Joe Biden's fault, right? I also think the hypocrisy. I think that like if that had happened under the Trump administration, I think that it would be all over social media. I think you'd hear everything about it, but it's almost like. Because it's Joe Biden, and people almost like it's not as popular to dislike him. It's almost like where's the outrage?
Yeah, I think Joe Biden was always more of a alternative to Trump for people that didn't like
Yes,
Trump,
exactly.
rather than a good option.
They were probably voting for him because they didn't like Trump, not because they thought he was going to be good. But that's a silly reason to vote for someone. Do you know what I mean? I mean, don't get me wrong. I can almost sympathise it with a bit, but I think this is a bit of the problem. I think it was we were talking about last week when I said it's like if you're going to have this weird system, you might as well just have a monarchy. Because if you're just going to have like literally like two candidates and you end up voting for who you dislike the least rather than who you actually think is good, well then you might as well just have a monarchy. Because at least with a monarchy, there's always like a chance that you're going to have a good king or queen. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I just think it's the whole idea of having a democratic like party set up, like situation where you have a government and a parliament and it's like elected officials, and it should be who the people want, not who the people dislike the least. It's the whole thing, the whole system's messed up, isn't it?
Yeah, the thing is always going to stand that choice is like number one for a lot of like first world countries and stuff that are democratic.
Yeah.
Democratic?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So democracy is the idea that we vote. We vote as a whole, and it's the majority. What the majority go with, that's who's in power. So obviously, that is pretty much the definition of democracy. Yeah. It's not ideal, but then again, I think so. Some people almost like don't like the idea of democracy because they think it's like they don't like the idea that say like 51% of people vote for something. It's like they don't like the idea. Well, then 49% of people have voted against it, and that's almost as much. But it's like, yeah, but is there a better system? Because it's like there's a really good saying, and what is it? It's it was about capitalism actually, and it was like capitalism seems like a bad idea until you compare it to everything else. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's like quite a good saying, like because like nothing, almost like nothing in life is perfect. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If you were like having these like almost like delusions of these like utopias and that, it's like, well, that's not really like life, is it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, not ever going to happen.
You can just try and make the best of everything. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, if there is a place, there is always going to be, or people, there is always going to be someone to control those people. And no matter who you pick, no matter who gets picked, it's always still going to be someone controlling someone else, which people don't agree with. Yeah,
and there's always going to be downsides. Yeah. There's always going to be downsides. It's 100%. It's just hopefully there'll be more upsides on the whole than downsides, and that's what it's up for us to try and make sure happens, isn't it? What is the best for the most people? Unfortunately, it doesn't always necessarily that everything's going to be ideal for everyone, but how can you possibly expect that to happen? Do you know what I mean?
It makes me think as what we talked about a few weeks ago as well, about that whole sphere of influence around you kind of thing. Like, the more that people like take control of their own lives in the way that they can, like for themselves, that's when like positive things will start happening, because the more you look at outwards, and you know, we're saying all these things about like Trump and Biden and all that kind of stuff, like that's someone in control, like, do you know what I mean, like putting it out there all the time. You're almost taking the responsibility away from yourself. It's their fault for doing this and doing that. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
But people are so stuck in that, I think. Do you know what I mean? Like if people don't look at themselves, they won't you know, there'll always be these people that will try and control them. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%. Like, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. Like, you know, like too many people worry about what they can't control in life rather than actually focusing on what you can control. You know, so like your own health. Who are the people that you put in energy into? Well, just what are you putting your energy into in terms of like your day-to-day life, the people around you? You know, like if you focus on that, then your life is, in most cases, unless you like literally living in a third world country or like living in some like crazy like communist state, other than that, your life is always going to be good, isn't it? You know, if you focus on those things, you know, it's up to you, isn't it?
Yeah, because you're never going to be totally happy with what someone else says is the best thing to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're always going to think like, or there's always going to be people that are like, nah, that's not the way I would do it. You know, so well, if that's not the way you do it, like think about, you know, how would you do it and see what.
I mean, personally, like when it comes to politics, I really don't have that strong of an opinion. Anyway,
I don't understand it too much.
Whatever I put time into, or let's say I voted for someone in particular, at the end of the day, it's one vote. Yeah. And I know a lot of people would consider that to be the wrong way to look at it. Yeah, but for me, I would rather focus on how I can change as a person. I
think that's a lot of wisdom in that. I think like at the end of the day, that's the main thing you can control. Like, or think of it this way, right? For anyone out there listening, if everyone in the world took that attitude,
Yeah.
there wouldn't be any problems.
Yeah, that's
Would
what
there?
I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, so like lots of people don't do that,
No.
or
It's
you
a
know,
point
they
the
would
finger
just rather
mentality.
Point the finger, but like
Yeah.
if everyone did that, then
Yeah.
automatically the world would start being better. Do you know what I mean?
100%. It is almost like crazy how many people seem to on social media and stuff just have that weird point the finger mentality. But oh well, everything would be alright if it wasn't for that person or like for this, and it's like
It's almost like a lack of taking responsibility, isn't it?
And it's so negative as well. Do you know what I mean? It just seems like so overly negative. It's like, oh come on, man. And it's like often I think people like that are the ones that are probably the most unhappy themselves, which is a shame, you know. But it's a shame that they're trying to go about it in such almost like an angry, bitter way, rather than, you know, spending more time with their friends, developing good relationships with people, you know, making sure you're doing good by people, maybe like taking your health into your own hands and working out more or doing the sport because that makes you feel good. Taking up some good hobbies that you like proper love and then you're excited about doing them. You know, it's a shame that like more people aren't investing in stuff like that. Anyway, let's listen to a track now. When we come back, we're just going to carry on shooting the breeze. Cheers for chilling out with us here today. This is Nobody Can See Me Cry by The Darkness. So that was pretty much a brand new Darkness song.
Loving these new Darkness songs, man.
Yeah, me too. They're like proper harkening back to a bygone era of Darkness back in like the day when, you know, they came out with like Thing Called Love and Growing On Me and stuff. Just really, yeah, just like real catchy old school like rock tracks, really, aren't they? Just like vintage Darkness. But yeah, loving all the new Darkness tracks. So like, if anybody enjoyed that, go check out because they've released like loads of new like new good tracks, like It's Love Jim But Not As We Know It and stuff like that. That's a real good track as well. Anyway, you are listening to Pandora's Box on Aspen Waite Radio. I'm your host as always, Obadiah Pennywhistle. Today we have Pardos.
Oh, that's it. I forgot what it was then for a second. I was like, oh, what's my name?
Ola Boyle.
Hola, boyo.
Oh, la boyo.
We've had a very deep, intricate and serious... We've had question time. Question time here today on Pandora's Box. But I think we've exasperated our stores of such conversations.
Of depth.
So let's have a little chat about like games. Board games and stuff. We were chatting earlier, weren't we, about things like Monopoly and Risk.
Yeah.
I was going on about how much I like Risk.
Yeah, and Uno as well.
Yeah, Uno is so good. Have you played Uno?
I haven't played Uno, no.
What?
Mate, next time you're
crazy.
right, you and Meg need to come over for some food, and we're gonna play Uno.
Sounds good.
We're gonna have an Uno fest, mate. It's so addictive. Anybody that's out there listening that's played Uno knows that.
Cluedo was
Oh,
always.
100%.
I'd always play Cluedo. Like
Oh, yeah.
that one.
I think Cluedo is probably the best like board game to pull out if you're like, if you don't want a long one.
Yeah. That's what she said. Yeah, yeah. No, it is a great game, isn't it? The whole fun of like the murder mystery element and stuff. Yeah, it is a real cool game. I haven't played Cluedo in so long. We should have like a games night and just play Cluedo and Uno and stuff. Mate, I'd love that. I actually would love that.
I did a puzzle over lockdown as well.
Oh, did you? Oh, that's cool, man.
I didn't finish it though. It's quite a hard one.
Turns out it was like a 50-piece puzzle.
It was like it was a 1,000-piece puzzle, and it was like some like lake, and it was just like like lake and water and like some trees and that. Do you know where it all looks almost like the same? And it's
Did
like
it just hurt your brain after a while?
Yeah.
The
I was
level
like,
of concentration needed
let's
after a
just
while.
put that back in the box. It's not getting finished.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I have done that with puzzles before, like 1,000-piece puzzles. They're fun, but it's almost like if you're doing that almost like to relax, after a while you're like, mate, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's just hurting my brain.
Yeah.
Like, I just need to like vegetate in front of something, like in front of like a television program or something. I haven't got like the mental capacity to be like deciphering between this tiny little black piece and this other tiny little black piece. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Have you seen Marco Polo on Netflix?
no, but you've told me about it,
man.
and I would like to see it at some point because obviously I know about Marco Polo.
Yeah, it is so good.
For people that don't know, Marco Polo was like one of the first people, if not the first person, that made a pretty accurate map of the globe. So yeah, as you were saying, Drew.
Yeah, I just found it really interesting with the whole thing of like the Khan. So it was a guy called Kubla Khan.
So that's the grandson of Genghis Khan. Yeah.
And it was just so interesting seeing like about the Mongolian culture and everything, and how big an empire it was and everything, and like he would just get like all of the best like Chinese like warriors and stuff, and get them to train like his closest people and guard and stuff like that. So Marco Polo got trained by this guy called 100 Eyes, and it's just so epic, like kung fu and stuff, you know. So cool.
Man, the Mongols were crazy. They're considered to have one of the best empires in the world.
Yeah.
Apparently as well, I can't remember the exact stats. Would you one of you actually look it up for me? Apparently the Mongolians, obviously not because they were like concerned about the climate, but just because of the sheer amount of people that they killed, and obviously then as a result the how many like resources weren't actually as many resources weren't as needed in the world. Apparently the Mongolian Empire like lowered the carbon footprint of the earth by like 70% or something ridiculous, or maybe not as much as that. It was like 40%, but just because, as I said, they killed so many people. Think like every single person then needs to eat for an entire lifetime, drink for an entire lifetime. Like every time they would have had like a pipe or anything, you know what I mean, just everything. Do you know what I mean? Like everybody has a carbon footprint regardless of how, you know, good or bad you are in regards to that sort of thing.
Doesn't say an actual percentage, but what I've got here is the Mongol invasion had the most significant impact. According to the studies accounting regrowth of forests during the Mongol invasion absorbed 700 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere.
Yeah, man. So like just because obviously as I said, like trees are needed cut down to build houses or boats or just everyday things like handles for hammers, handles for weapons, like axes. Like obviously, the less people there are, it's just not as needed. So all these trees regrew, and just like it massively increased like the health of the planet, essentially. Which is so.
What actually happened to the Mongolian Empire then?
I think
you don't hear about it so much.
It wasn't one of those ones that was like overthrown necessarily. It just sort of like
fizzled out.
It fizzled out, yeah. Because obviously Genghis Khan was like the main G. And he pretty much, I can't remember how many people he killed in his lifetime, but it was like millions. Like he wiped out like millions of people.
And Kublai Khan actually did take over China. So
he's
considered the emperor of China.
He's considered the second most successful Khan after Genghis, like Kublai. Yeah. So they are a fascinating tribe, though. Like the way that they just mastered like archery on horseback. They were like the finest archers on horseback that the world's like ever seen.
And crazy war tactics. Like there was this thing that Genghis Khan did with he ordered the like the Chinese like place he was taking over to give them like 10,000 birds in like payment to like not, you know. And the way that he took over this city was he got given all of these birds, then he set all of the birds on fire, and he knew that because they were treated really well, they would just fly home. So like he completely like burnt down this whole city just by setting these birds on fire and just letting 10,000 birds go back to the.
That's
Chinese
crazy.
thing. Just stuff like
I know another mental but extremely effective battle tactic he had. Because the Chinese were like such an advanced empire in their own right. They'd heard that basically like the Mongolian Empire had been like cutting a bloody swath across Asia, but they were like, oh, okay, well, but like the Mongols, they have all these like amazing cavalry archers and stuff, but they don't have like the Chinese had built. They were very much like the Romans in terms of like they had built like these massive fortresses
and stuff like that,
and they had like massive walled towns, and they were like, you know, what can like a Mongolian archer on a horse do if we literally just bar the gates and we've literally got like 40-foot high like fortresses like just surrounding our entire towns.
Yeah.
So they're like, literally, we'll just like shut the doors, barricade them, and the Mongolians just literally just can't come in, right? So what the Mongolians did, which is this is absolutely savage, but like so effective, but just like requires such a like a level of like savagery, because when the Mongolians were invading, this is one of the times in life when like the Black Plague was sort of running rampant across the world. Yeah. So they just got infected, like bodies that were infected with the Black Plague, and just built catapults and just catapulted loads of them into the city. So that all the people in the city would just get the Black Death, and then they just all came out like dying of plague, like savagely with like the bubonic plague.
Oh my god!
So they just like didn't even have to like hardly any of them actually even had to like raise a bow. They just like killed them all inside just from plague, and then like after just waited for a while, and then like when enough people were dead or like the few that were left over. Eventually opened the doors, because it was almost like such a horror scene inside that it would be better to just come out and face and then they just took over China.
Whoa,
that's crazy.
That's like brutal, isn't it?
But I've always found Genghis Khan so interesting because he's like one of the most powerful people ever.
A lot of people debate that he's there's like different schools of thought, and there's no like unanimous decision, because some people will say Alexander the Great, maybe a few people might say Attila the Hun. Some people might say Julius Caesar, but I think he is. I'd say probably most historians consider him the most successful like warlord of all time.
Imagine the god complex that you would have after being like the most powerful person on the planet and pretty much taking over the world.
Mate.
It's crazy. You must literally. There's no one better than you or no one more powerful than you in the planet at that time.
I know that we've actually talked about this on I can't remember what show it was on Aspen Waite Radio before, but would one of you Google how the percentage of the population that are descended from Genghis Khan? Because I know that he
about 16 million people or 0.5%.
That's mad, isn't it? If you actually think about it, to think that like 0.5 might not sound like a big percentage, but when you consider it of the whole population of the world, what's the population of the world nowadays? Is it about 9 billion? Maybe
about 8 billion.
Yeah, a bit less. Yeah, that's a lot of people, as you said, about 60 million people. Because he slept with so many women in his life, he just fathered so many children. Because like every night he would just impregnate like 3 women every night. Because that's just the life of a Khan. Because that's just the life of a Khan.
They had their harems and like
yeah.
It was like the Hall of 9 Pleasures or something.
I think he had like 400 wives or something. And then, but obviously, yeah, he would just he wasn't just confined to sleeping with those women because he was like the most powerful man in the world. So he would just sleep with whoever he wanted.
Yeah. And then when you're like traveling across the whole world, it just spreads, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now we've got 7.9 billion people on the planet.
Yeah, that's an interesting statistic. But yeah, Genghis Khan, what a crazy fella. Anyway, we're going to listen to a track now. We're going to listen to Friendship by Tenacious D. When we come back, we're going to carry on shooting the breeze. Thanks for joining us this evening on Pandora's Box. You're listening to Aspen Waite Radio. I'm your host, as always, Obadiah Pennywhistle. And as usual with me, we have Pardos.
What's up?
A.K.A. Mr. Drew Armstrong. And we also have Hola Boyo.
Hola Boyo.
A.K.A. Mr. Nathaniel Warren. We were just having a good chat about Genghis Khan.
Yeah, randomly.
And how, just mentioned, I don't even know how we got into it as well, Drew, because we were talking about games. We were talking about games, then suddenly you just went, have you seen Marco Polo?
Because you were like, oh, sometimes I can't do the games. I just want to watch nice thing. You know? So
yeah.
Like, have you seen Marco Polo?
That does actually make sense. I, in my head for a second, was like, is he going to tie this back into games in a minute, or is it? That was cool anyway. I think that Alexander the Great's a really interesting figure.
I want to know more about Alexander the Great. I've read a little bit about him and stuff, but it sounds like a very interesting character. And didn't he die when he was like 32 or something? Or 35?
But interesting about him, he didn't actually die, but everyone thought he was dead because he'd basically caught it was something like he'd caught some sort of disease that completely paralyzes the body and you can't even move your eyes. So everyone thought that he was dead, but nowadays most historians think that he actually was still alive.
Right.
But he just got buried.
But they just buried him. So obviously then eventually, died of that.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about both Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, is that nobody knows where they were buried. Nobody knows where they're buried. So I think that's a really fascinating thing. So it's like a lot of archaeologists like dedicate their lives just to finding the tombs of Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great because they're like two of the most famous people in history.
Well, they must have had something like quite grandiose.
I know that Genghis Khan was deliberately hidden, and I think that just nobody knows where Alexander was buried.
Isn't it the same with Jesus?
Yeah. Anyway, this is Leg of Time by Bill Bailey. Stick around. We're going to carry on the chat in a minute. Welcome back to Pandora's Box. We're chatting about lots of things today. Yeah, we were just saying, nobody knows where Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great were buried. Or Jesus. Yeah, so Genghis Khan was deliberately buried in a secret location. I know that because with the idea being that he made so many enemies in his lifetimes and almost like wiped out and destroyed so many civilizations, they thought that the Mongols were worried, and Genghis was worried, that like if people knew where his tomb was, they would defile it.
Right.
So he was buried in secret. But the interesting thing is that archaeologists have been looking for him for like hundreds of years all over Asia. And obviously they know the sort of region where it's most likely that he would have been buried. Yeah. Because they know where he was.
Steppe.
Yeah, exactly, on the steppes. But so they know like roughly in Asia where he would have been when he died. But they just don't know where he was buried. So one day he probably will be found, I imagine.
Even though they hid it, you would think they would have some kind of big tomb or something that fits his. The
thing is, mate, any day, some archaeologists could just stumble across this like epic as hell chamber, and it'd probably have like skeletons of like war horses in there.
It's a big old place, Mongolia, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, massive, but really low population. Yeah, which is quite interesting. One of those countries, a bit like Australia or something. But Same with Alexander the Great. The problem is with Alexander the Great is he was probably buried in Alexandria, and obviously Alexandria was wiped out.
Right.
Was wiped out because of like natural disasters. I think it was a flood. Would one of you find that out for me? I'm pretty sure there was like a massive, like almost like tsunami or flood, and it almost like drowned. But Alexandria was supposed to be like one of the most amazing cities like ever built. Apparently, the Library of Alexandria was the most epic library ever.
Wow. Where was this?
It was in Egypt.
In Egypt.
So one of the places that Alexander the Great conquered in his lifetime was Egypt, and he founded Alexandria, obviously named after himself, Alexandria. Have you found out, man?
Yeah. So Alexandria was actually burned down by Julius Caesar.
No way! I thought I could have sworn it was like a flood or something.
So for about 300 years after its founding in 283 BCE, the library thrived, but then in 48 BCE, Julius Caesar laid siege to Alexandria and set the ships in the harbour on fire. For years, scholars believed that the library burned down as a blaze spread into the city.
That's crazy. Apparently, the lighthouse of Alexandria was one of the wonders of the world.
Yeah.
It was like the most epic, massive lighthouse ever. Basically, it was one of the wonders of the world. And also, there was like a law in Alexandria that every single because like it was such a massive and important city. Literally, boats from every corner of the world would come to Alexandria. So some would
proper trade in place.
Yeah, even though it was like in Egypt, you'd get ones from modern day Italy, Greece, China. Modern day France, like just everywhere, and they had a law that by law, once you came into Alexandria, whether it was by dock or by horse or by foot, you had to hand over every single book, and then what they would do is the librarians of Alexandria would then take the books to the library, make copies of them. And then before the people would leave, they would then hand their books back to them. So they had the largest history ever, and it's one of the biggest. It's considered like one of the biggest like catastrophes in literally in history. Is that the Library of Alexandria burnt down was because for 110%, there must be so much for like knowledge that was just lost forever. Lost, literally just lost to the ether of time from that burn down. They would have had there'd be things like areas of history today that just don't make sense to us that we would just all the gaps would be filled in. Old bits of like amazing like history and astronomy and mathematics passed down from like ancient cultures, whether it was Babylonia, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Sumerians, either because, as I said, all the ancient Chinese, because people from every corner of those would come with these books. And unfortunately, they just all got burnt.
That's what I think savage with some of these like empires and that we were saying, like Mongolia and that. I remember seeing in this program as well about some of the temples in China. There'd be like these Taoist monks and stuff that had like for thousands of years like had so much knowledge, and the Mongols would just go up and just completely wipe out their temples and burn all the books and everything, and it's just like such a catastrophe that you just lose all of that.
That was one of the things that almost made me most infuriated with ISIS when ISIS was a big problem about 5 years ago. Was it that long? It was about 5 years ago now, wasn't it?
Maybe 10 even.
Anyway,
quite a while ago, but
because like one of the things that they were doing was going across like the Middle East and like destroying any temple, wasn't it? Because obviously like with their like obviously one of their things is they think that any sort of perceived deity that isn't their deity is like heresy. So all of these like ancient like buildings that are literally thousands of years old, like 3,000 plus years old, which are like living history, they were just going and just destroying into rubble. And it's almost like, almost makes me like just put my head in my hands. I'm just like, no, like, because that is almost like such a beautiful and amazing part of living history. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the fact that that's almost like for some, I don't know. It's like, can you not just appreciate it for like
that's it. Appreciate it. Don't be threatened by it, because you'll lose it forever if you do that.
Yeah, like I could care. Like I don't. I'm sure I don't agree with like most of the things that whoever like built those temples believed in. Like, but who cares? Like, does that really matter? I just think it's amazing that there was this ancient civilization that built that there, and you can go to this day, and it's almost like this weird relic of time. It's almost like for a minute, for like a moment, you can almost feel like you're going back in time. You can literally go there physically and you can touch it, and then it's almost like trippy to imagine that thousands, if not millions, of hands that have touched that same spot like for thousands of years, and then to imagine what every single person that have touched that, what their life was like throughout the ages, and that's almost like trippy, but in a really fascinating, amazing way. And to think that just in like a split moment that could be destroyed because of like hatred and ignorance is just really sad. Just really sad, man.
Totally, dude.
So yeah, R.I.P. Library of Alexandria. I'd love to like go back in time and like just walk around it.
I've always wanted to because the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is another one of the ancient wonders.
Yes, that's right.
And I would have loved to like see what that looks like. 'Cause it looks like such a feat of like engineering and.
I don't know.
I've not even heard of that one.
Do you not?
Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
Where's that? Was that modern day Iraq or Syria?
I'll find out.
Yeah, would you find out, man? I'm not. I know probably the least about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon compared to. Actually, I'm not 100% sure if people even know for a fact it was real. Do they?
Well, it's one of the ancient wonders. Like
yeah, I'm not. I think it's one of those things that people might even not know where it is. Like I think that for some reason it's coming back to me now. I think that people might have been searching for the Hanging Gardens of Babylon for like a long time and not found it.
Yeah, it's Iraq's historical city.
I thought it was Iraq.
The reason that Hanging Gardens of Babylon was so special, it says here, is because the gardens were built like high above the ground on multi-level stone terraces.
Mad.
The plants weren't rooted in the earth like a traditional garden. If it existed, it was most likely the most beautiful man-made gardens ever created.
Whoa. Step aside, Eden Project. Yeah,
Sounds
that is
cool.
amazing though. Like I think it's really cool. Like there's a lot of, it's like the Middle East houses so much crazy history. Like obviously Sumeria, ancient Sumeria, that was like in the Middle East. I think that's either Iran or Iraq or Syria, isn't it?
I don't know.
Would you find out where ancient Sumeria was, man? It's like Sumerian, like Sumerian, Sumerian, or Sumeria, obviously without the N. Yeah, I just think like it's really crazy, isn't it? Because I think like you think of the Middle East.
Mesopotamia.
Oh, Mesopotamia is another one. Like you think of like the Middle East nowadays, and obviously compared to some other places in the world, it doesn't seem like the most advanced place. Do you know what I mean? That's obviously not being at all rude to the Middle East. I know that there's lots of nice places in the Middle East, but obviously you don't think of it as like compared to like where like like America or China, or like Japan or like the UK. It doesn't seem like it's got as many developed cities or like as much technology, things like that. But there was at one stage, they had Hanging Gardens, Babylon, Sumeria. These are like some of the most crazy, off the wall, impressive civilizations that have ever lived throughout history. You know, like back when people in Britain would have literally been living in like little mud huts, there were these massive civilizations that like understood maths, understood astronomy, understood like basic science, like crazy, really. Everyone could have read and write, whereas like nobody could read and write in Britain at the same in those days.
Yeah.
It's just this cold land where people were just hunting bears.
I never really thought about it like that, as in like at that same time in Britain it would be completely different.
Mate,
like,
we would have essentially just been barbarians.
Wow.
Just living in huts, just, hunting.
And then you've got these, they're so like far forward from, like some of these buildings are stuff that if they were around now, everyone would still see it as a feat of like, that's crazy. Even with like the pyramids of Giza. Everyone looks at them now and is there much architecture now that really compares to the pure size and everything?
Not really.
Like you've got,
it's like people were like impressed by say like the Shard in London, and like don't get me wrong, I haven't actually been in the Shard, but I've walked past it. Last time I went to London, in 2019, I was like at the foot of the Shard. I literally walked past the entrance to it, and like, it looks impressive, but don't get me wrong, I wasn't like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Well, we build things so quickly now as well. Like when you think of like any of those things that were built out like all those years ago, it would be a huge feat, and it would be like, that's how you were showing the world what you could do as with your tech, with what you could do as a culture and everything. And it's so much more beautiful. Like architecture did used to be more beautiful, I think.
And to think that like say like the Shard was built with modern like building and DIY equipment.
The main one that really
power
compares
tools,
now,
diggers, and
the main one that really compares now with like the Shard and the ancient buildings is obviously the Burj Khalifa. Like
where's
the tallest building, Dubai.
Is that Dubai? Yeah.
Yeah, the tallest building in the world.
That would be quite cool to see that.
It is crazy, and they've got like the fountains, but everything. But I think all of it's like built over blood. like people are forced to work to build all these places, and Dubai's
such a rich country as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Haven't they got like
oil,
haven't they got something like the biggest? Yeah, and
Oil
gold. I
reserves.
think. I'm not 100% sure about. I think they might have quite a lot of gold mines there as well.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
know
like
it's super oil rich country as well.
they're like the police over there drive like Lamborghinis and that,
Yeah,
which is crazy
the
for
Dubai,
us.
like princes and everything are like some of the richest people on the planet.
Yeah, but like it's all like it's almost like a bit like dictators
A
almost.
bit blood money.
Yeah. Like you don't want to get on the wrong side of them because it's
Yeah.
like. If ironically, like a bit like what we were saying though, like the only place I've ever been to in the UK where I've been like
Astonished.
absolutely in awe of a building ever was one that was like originally built. I think it was originally built like about 900 years ago, but it's obviously been like I think it's been like knocked down and rebuilt several times since then. So yet again, basically a very old building, and that was York Minster Cathedral in York. Have either of you two seen York Minster Cathedral?
I haven't. No.
It is insane. It's the second biggest cathedral in the whole of Europe.
Wow.
And I remember just like looking at it, and like for a second, I just suddenly like felt like I'd like shrunk or something. I felt like an ant like next to it. Like, I mean, like we live quite close to like Wells, for example.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say Wales. I was pretty impressive.
I've been to Wells like lots of times, but like I mean, don't get me wrong. I go to Wells and I'm like, oh, it's a beautiful building, but like. I don't want to understate Wells Cathedral because it's a beautiful cathedral, but it doesn't boggle my mind. Do you know what I mean? I can be on the green.
So it's much bigger than that.
Oh, mate, it makes Wells Cathedral look like a pea.
Whoa.
I'd say it's twice as tall and probably
Christ.
4 times the mass in terms of like square foot. Yeah, in terms of like if you like the square footage, I'd say it's probably 4 times that of Wells Cathedral, and I'd say it's twice as tall. As I said, I looked into it afterwards because I was like, how have I not really ever heard so much about York Minster Cathedral? And I looked into it, and I know it's the second biggest cathedral in the world. I read that the second biggest cathedral in Europe. I read that the biggest one is somewhere in Germany, and I was like, whoa, imagine what that one must look like. But it was like insane, and it's one of those buildings that is so big, it's in a constant state of maintenance because it's so massive that there's always something that needs doing there. It's like, do you know what I mean? Can you imagine it? It's like by the time they finished, like say in a storm, like a bit of lightning hit and like destroyed like a gargoyle on that side of the building. It's like by the time they fix that, something on this other side's done. So it's like this constant state of maintenance. It's
I
like
think like churches and cathedrals in general are some of the best architecturally built buildings in the planet. Especially when I went to Barcelona recently, and we went to go see the Sagrada Familia.
Yeah.
Obviously,
it's a very
Gaudi's
famous one. Yeah.
Gaudi's unfinished one, but you go inside and it's just
still being worked on now, isn't it?
Yes, so I believe
That's crazy, isn't it?
It's due to finish in 2030.
That's quite cool that it's like being finished in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Well, wait.
Yeah,
but like,
when you go in there, it almost feels like ethereal.
yeah, and it's got a very individual style, isn't it?
Yes, completely. You walk in and the pillars are built like trees, and
Yeah,
the stained
amazing.
glass is so beautiful that it floods the entire room.
Proper
and
work
it's
of art.
just- Yeah,
I think that's the
completely.
cool thing about cathedrals as well. Like, yeah, they are works of art as well, but
that's
they're
it.
so grand, they're so massive, but they're like works of art, and it's like depending on which architect made them, they have a different feel. As you said, Gaudi, obviously a very famous architect and artist, and he like had a specific flavour. And then you go to York Minster, and it's very Gothic. It's got that like Gothic European style. It's almost like you could imagine almost like at night time, like vampires and creatures like just. Like,
Isn't it weird that they like real love that style, like that scary almost kind of like that? You think old as like like very pretty and stuff, and like Tudor kind of. That was.
Well, I know that
cool
one
as
of the
well.
reasons why like old school Christians
to scare off the evil spirits.
No. Like one of the reasons why like Christians even used to go to the effort to make such amazing buildings was because one of the ways that like the gentry, like basically like the richer and more powerful people in societies in like medieval times and the Renaissance period and stuff, one of the ways that they would keep power over the lower classes was basically fear of God. So they would almost like keep the lower classes in check by almost like being like, remember guys, you all have to live your lives like this, otherwise you're going to hell. And it was almost like the way, imagine if it was like 1200 AD, if it was like 800 years ago, and you were just like some lowly peasant. You couldn't read or write. You just were told all your life that like God and the devil is real, and if you live your life this way, you can go to heaven. But if you live your life this way, you're going to like be tortured in like this fiery inferno for like infinity, right? And you were like just told this all your life, and that like you knew that there were these places of God, and you would go to them, and like even just like your local church. For most people at the time, it would have been almost like scary. The architecture, like most people would go there with like the belief that like the only way this building makes sense to me is that it was built with the will of God. And when you see the big cathedrals, that's just like obviously taken up to another notch, because it almost, because even today, the idea that these places were built without, you know, diggers and power tools and stuff like that was just literally built with like donkeys, men, hammers and like nails and stuff, like chisels. Like that's crazy. You go in any cathedral and like see it. It's like, what? Like how the hell was that built with like, it'd be impressive if they did build it with all these modern things, like, you know? As we
I
said,
wish buildings were still like built with a bit more panache. Like
yeah,
that.
because it's almost like today everything seems rushed.
No, yeah, like do you know like places like Canterbury? Have you been to Canterbury?
Yeah.
And you walk through like the streets of Canterbury, and it literally feels like you're on a movie set, or like Dunster, or like
Cirencester's like that as well, isn't it?
Ah, cool.
You know, you've been to Cirencester.
Have I been to Cirencester?
Yeah, me and you went a couple of years ago, and it was snowing.
Oh yeah.
remember?
Did I get my rug from there? My
Yes.
Yeah.
You got your sheepskin rug.
Yeah.
And then we went for a pint in that real nice pub, and I can't remember what the name of the beer was I had there, but it was one of the nicest ales I've ever had. And I remember I was real gutted because I went home and I tried to find some online to buy, and I couldn't find it anywhere. And I've forgotten what it is since.
Yeah.
It must have been like some local beer from Cirencester
Nice.
or something, but it was amazing. And I remember there was that little ram on the way back to the car park, and I straddled it. I remember that. There's a picture of me on my Instagram on it. I'll find it actually to show you guys.
In the meantime, I've got like a fun fact as well. We were speaking about obviously architecture, and I spoke a little bit about Gaudi.
Yep.
We got told this when we were on like a tour guide.
Yeah.
Or a tour trip
Where was
around
that?
Park Güell in Barcelona.
Oh yeah.
And basically, Gaudi's death is like really like sad because he was so into his work. He knew like his death was coming eventually as he's getting into his later years, obviously. He would literally just work all day, and all he would have is like a pint of milk with some lettuce in it. That was like all he'd eat.
With lettuce.
So like, and no one was seeing him because he was always in his workshop.
Yeah.
So eventually one day he like he was living in Sagrada Familia like at this time, and he left one day and got hit by a tram, right? And died, right? Or didn't die like straight away, but they took him to the poor person hospital because no one recognised it was Gaudi because he looked so different, because all he was having is this milk with lettuce.
Oh wow.
Right,
So
and
like
he died in the like
malnourished.
poor person hospital when he most likely would have been saved if he went to like the rich person one.
the decent one.
But actually looking at the power that he held was crazy, because there was photos of his funeral and everything, and like thousands and thousands of people all just wearing black roaming the streets just to pay respects to
Well, even nowadays,
Gaudi.
there's like there are people that are into like their art and their architecture and stuff. It's like he is like a revered figure, isn't he? There are people out there that like love Gaudi,
Yeah.
and like will travel from all over the world to go to Barcelona just to see the Sagrada Familia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Barcelona now is like a really revered, like you said, sort of place of architecture. When you walk around, everything's so grand. And it was sad coming back, actually, because you walk around now and I see like a Nisa local. When you'd walk around then, see a museum with all these figures on the side and everything like that. And I just think it's crazy how before he was around, from what they said on this tour, it was like not that at all. Like the buildings were so close together that you could barely walk through them. Like you could high five each other from each other's balconies either side of the road.
Yeah.
That was the sort of city it was.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's become this place of architecture and grandiose and everything. And it's just crazy to see what you can do with the city if someone with influence takes a stride.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? It's like it would be so much better if there were people that had that more like just had that like, as well as just being like a bare bones architect in terms of like, we need this building, we need this street, like have that artistic flair. Just makes it life so much better. As you said, walking through places like Canterbury or whatever, or, you know, it just makes everything so much better.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the picture of me straddling a ram in Cirencester.
Nice.
That was on that nice, fateful, snowy day.
Very nice.
Thought you'd like that. Anyway, we're going to listen to a track now. This is Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in, I can't actually remember what the rest of it is, in a little town, something like that. When we come back, we will carry on having a nice chat. Check this out. Yeah. That was Metallica with their cover of Thin Lizzy's classic track, Whiskey in a Jar. You're listening to Pandora's Box on Aspen Waite Radio. Cheers for chilling with us this evening. We've been talking about a plethora of just interesting topics. We've covered everything from COVID, Druvid-19, because Mr. Pardo's over here has just recovered from COVID. We've talked about Cluedo. We've talked about Gaudi.
Trump.
We've talked about Trump and Joe Biden. We've talked about Canterbury. All sorts of cool stuff. Genghis Khan. Can't miss
real
that
mix
one
of it today.
A real interesting mix. Yeah, so getting back into the conversation, there was something cool that you told me the other day. Hola, boyo.
Hola, boy.
But that Drew doesn't know yet.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Pardos. Sorry.
Oh.
So let's hear it, mate. Let's hear it. So just to set the scene. So what was it? 3 or 4 weeks ago on Pandora's Box, we talked about like sleep paralysis, something that a lot of people have suffered with. I remember hearing that 70% of people at least at some stage in their life will suffer from sleep paralysis, whether that's just once or whether that's in some extreme cases. I know that a small percentage of the population suffer from it like weekly, almost like every night, which is savage. So anybody out there that does suffer from that, like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you have to suffer from the demons. But yeah, didn't your missus like recently have an experience?
Yeah, so my girlfriend Cara had this sleep paralysis experience recently, where basically she said she had this really vivid dream where she was trying to save her family or something along those lines. She can't really remember it too much now, but obviously if she's had this sleep paralysis, then that was probably the thing to remember rather than the dream. But she says she woke up and she was like a bit confused and thought that I'd like broken into a house and was waking her up.
All right.
And she said she could feel someone like sat on her chest and she could feel like the pressure going down their chest and everything, and thought it was me. And then she was a bit confused why she couldn't move or anything like that. Then she started to say she realised this thing sat on her chest was like a demon.
What?
Yeah. So, and apparently this demon was like communicating to her, basically just saying like, oh, you can't save them, almost like representing in the dream where she was trying to save her parents. And I think eventually she came to, and the first thing she did was message me letting me know the story. But I just thought it was crazy how it almost like perfectly
like, what are the chances?
goes hand in hand with the one that you
like we were chatting about
us.
like weeks ago, and as I said to you when we were talking about it the other day, like your missus' experience is almost like a complete like cross between like the two bad experiences I had.
Yeah. So for context, obviously your experience, one of them you saw like
almost like a hag. Like,
Yeah.
it's like old, almost like stereotypical, almost like depiction, if you can imagine like a hag and almost like a white, like almost like a very old fashioned like Victorian style like white gown. With almost like really like long dirty hair, almost like covering her face, a bit like in The Ring, I guess, but like but rather than being like an Asian girl, was like like an old like hag ridden, almost like that old caricature of like a witch with like a big like big twisted nose and everything, and like really freaky, and was like slowly coming towards me, and then like was like putting all this pressure down on my chest. And then the second one I had like didn't move, but it was just like at the foot of my bed and looked almost like the like traditional stereotypical like outline of like a demon. But I couldn't see any like details because it was like almost pitch black in my room, but I could almost like just about see the figure. But it was almost like talking to me in my head.
So freaky.
which is exactly pretty much what my girlfriend describes.
So she had like the pressure on her chest and stuff. But
yeah, the pressure on the chest is the main thing that makes me like, whoa, that's pretty weird, because that's like a, you know,
that's just a feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, just almost feels like you're being like pinned down by this like insanely powerful force. Like you just can't, literally, like you can't budge an inch. It's like really strange.
I
really
think the
strange.
bit that really gets to me is the communication.
Oh.
Like having it communicate with you and tell you, oh, you can't do this.
Yeah, it was like almost like psychic, like it was like telepathic, like
So
just communicating with me in my head.
I almost want to experience it now.
Just
so I can say it from my own first
I
hand.
I know what you mean. Like I always feel that about like supernatural experiences. It's almost like I want to experience them, even though like, you know, some people
they
are like
freak you right out at the time.
but it's just like because almost like the adrenaline rush or almost like the curiosity is like worth it.
That something like that could be real, you know.
Yeah, that's why like when I went to the Edinburgh Vaults, obviously in Edinburgh, I was just almost like when the tour guide was like saying where like the areas of the different rooms where like most of the things happen, I would just go stand there because I just like wanted something to happen. Do you know what I mean? But then it's like, as I said, I think I talked about that on like one of the shows. It's like nothing happened to me, but then it's like some people that are really into the supernatural and that are like psychic and stuff will say like things like that won't happen to you if you're like willing it to happen.
Yeah.
Because things like entities or whatever like prey off fear. So like they all do it to the people that least want it to happen. But that's interesting in itself, isn't it? That must just go show like the power of psychology in a way. And why it's probably actually good to have that attitude almost like of like not being,
you're more protected.
Don't like be like, don't almost like victimize yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't make yourself come across like a victim, because then things in life will victimize you. It's a little bit almost like common sense in a way. It's like they say that with like aggressive dogs. It's like if you stand up to like, if a dog's like barking at you and it's like quite an aggressive dog, if you stand up to it and like advance, the dog, even if it stays barking at you, will more likely like back off.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you like run away, the dog's natural instinct is to chase you, and then it might just jump on your back, and you know what I mean? I know that's like happened to like cyclists. Like a cyclist I know, like they said that like, you know, a dog like came bounding out of like a farm once as they were cycling past, and it literally, because they just tried to cycle faster, the dog literally like jumped on their back and like ripped them off their bike. It was obviously just like quite an aggressive farm dog. Whereas like if he'd probably just like stopped and was like, "What's your problem, dog?" The dog would have probably just been like, "Oh, all right, so yeah, I'm just gonna go back in."
Well,
now.
I think it's the same with bears, isn't it? You want to be quite not aggressive too, but you want to be
stand
loud,
your ground.
Make yourself big.
You're told to basically be almost like be neutral. Like don't be aggressive, but also like the worst thing you can do is try and run away. And also it's pointless, because bears can run up to like run at the speeds of like horses. Yeah. So it's like what are you gonna do running like 8 miles an hour away from something that can run 25 miles, something that can run 25 miles an hour? And there's no point climbing trees in that, because most bears can climb trees. Yeah. The only bears that can't climb trees are bears that are so massive that they've lost the ability to do it, like Kodiak bears and stuff like that. But in which case, though, that's terrifying in itself, because, like, I hope you're...
They could probably break the tree down.
Yeah, I was going to say, they're probably so big and strong, because, like, bears are some of, like, the most powerful creatures that you'll, like, experience in the wild, because they're, like, they're the biggest land carnivore on the planet, aren't they, bears? Even bigger than, like, tigers and lions and stuff. Like, terrifying beasts.
Yeah, bears are huge.
Yeah, so your advice is, like, stand your ground and make yourself look as big as possible, because what you want the bear to do is just think, there's probably easier prey. That's what you want them to think. So don't like approach them, because then they might get defensive and just swipe first, ask questions later. In which case, like, you know, there's a good chance like a bear, like apparently bears. I know that like I've heard things about bears where they've literally said that they've seen bears like break deer in half with like one swipe of their paws. Like not obviously like rip them in half, but like, you know, they've been chasing deers, caught up with them, and like slammed their paw onto like a back of a deer and like broken a deer's back. And like think deers are like big, strong creatures, aren't they? Like big, you know, like you wouldn't want to like get rammed by like a big stag, would you? I thought like a bear can just like break it in half with like one strike is insane.
Crazy nature.
Crazy nature. How do we get onto bears from sleep paralysis? Anyway, this next track is My Hero by Foo Fighters. Then we're going to come back, chat for just a little bit, wrap up the show. I said, cheers for chilling with us this evening, guys. This is My Hero by Foo Fighters.
Nice.
That is an epic track. That is Show Me a Leader by Alter Bridge. That was actually picked on the Dark Dale last week by Ola Bolos.
Ola Boyo.
Ola Boyo, sorry, Boyo, not Bolo. By his older brother, Zeuswar the Gold. That was picked by Zeuswar the Gold and Dark Dale last week. Show Me a Leader, Aldridge, epic. Before that, we had My Hero by Foo Fighters. You are listening to Pandora's Box on Aspen Waite Radio, and I am your host, as always, Obadiah Pennywhistle. As I said, with me, Ola Boyo.
Ola Boyo.
And Pardo, who's over here. He our Italian cohort who has travelled from Naples to be here with us this afternoon. So yeah, we're just chatting, shooting the breeze about all sorts of stuff today. We were just chatting about bears and sleep paralysis and paranormal entities in general. We've covered so many subjects today. We've probably covered more like topics today, like just random stuff, than on any other show so far. Yeah.
Keeping the theme of switching topic every couple seconds, I've got a question for you.
Let's hear it.
How much money would you have to be paid, right, for someone to make you lose a finger at random, right, or thumb. So you lose a finger or thumb at random. Like you don't necessarily get it chopped off, but it just disappears, and you don't know what one it's going to be.
So you wouldn't feel the pain?
No, but it's just the.
But it could be at random.
Not having a finger. Yeah.
The thing is,
if you lose a thumb,
that's game changer.
That's.
If it's like a little finger, that's not too bad. Because like who uses their little finger that much? You would use it a lot on your left hand, being a lead guitarist.
Yeah, I was going to say the only finger I would actually be prepared to lose at all would be my
your right
little finger. But then I still use that rooted on the guitar when I'm finger picking.
And even me, like even though I'm not like a lead guitarist or anyone near as good as Drew, I still do use my little finger when I'm playing guitar.
Yeah.
Not as much as Drew would, but I mean it is limiting. There are some chords that you need all fingers.
Yeah,
you can't always get away with just a three-fingered play. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, as you said, thumbs. I mean, that's awful.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that sets apart humans from any other animal, isn't it? Opposable thumbs.
Monkeys have opposable thumbs as well. Don't
Apes
they?
do.
Apes.
Well, I think most monkeys actually do. Yeah. Sorry. I'm pretty sure all
chimps.
Monkeys. Yeah, because chimps are apes. Yeah, but obviously monkeys aren't apes necessarily.
Obviously, that links with our brains allows us to make tools and use tools, which sort of advanced us as a species.
It's like so one of the advantages we have. One of the reasons we're apex predators, even though obviously if we're unarmed, compared to a bear or a tiger or a shark, we are pretty useless. But the things that makes us apex predators is because you suddenly give a man that knows how to use it a spear, or obviously in modern day cases, just give him a gun, and suddenly you are apex. Do you know what I mean? You are the alpha dog. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Because you've basically got all these artificial weaponry, whereas obviously all other animals have to rely on their natural weaponry.
Other animals don't really have tools, do they, that much?
Some of the apes do.
Yeah.
Like apes and orangutans and chimps have been observed to do rudimentary things like I know I heard a couple of years ago that chimps have entered the Stone Age. So apes have entered their own version of the Stone Age.
That's crazy.
That's great, and it was only it was literally considered to start a couple of years ago, which is pretty cool. So they've only just started using stones for random tools and things like that. Really rudimentary at this stage.
Yeah.
But cracking things open with stones, because they've realised that things that they can't open with their hands, they can open with stones.
Even seeing that evolution is just crazy.
Throwing rocks, basically projectiles, which is the start. Throwing a rock at an enemy chimp is the bare, but think about the evolution. That's at some point going to turn into a bow and arrow or a spear.
Yeah,
and
I
then
swear
at some
I saw
point,
some
you know what I mean?
monkeys with spears, getting fish or something.
That's orangutans. So I was just about to say that, and orangutans have been observed doing very archaic fishing. But not probably the way that you're thinking, man. So not they haven't got wire on it, and it's they've cast that out and they're reeling it in. Imagine that. But yeah, they're I can't remember exactly what they were doing with the.
They were hanging off the side of the trees into a river and
jabbing spear fishing. Yeah.
I've got a photo of it up now. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, they're clever. They're clever beasts, aren't they? Anyway, I don't know. So we've literally come into the end of the show, but do you know what? I'm not sure if I would accept any money for it.
No, me neither.
Because if I lost a thumb, I love weight training and training in general. I wouldn't be able to hold dumbbells and barbells, and it would mess up my guitaring. And also, even though I'm not a massive gamer, I like the idea that if there was a game that came out and I wanted to play it, if I haven't got a thumb, I can't play the game. Just there's so many things that you could go down that avenue. So I reckon I would just flat up not accept it.
I reckon chuck a mil on the table and I'd think about it.
I would need more than a mil. I'd need enough to know that I could get a bionic thumb afterwards. That would be just as good as my original. Anyway, we've come to the end of Pandora's Box. Thanks for chilling with us this afternoon, guys. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. To play you out, this is Brave New World by Greta Van Fleet.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.